medical as well, which is obviously very prevalent over the last 18 months or so. And then this all comes together in IBM services. So that is absolutely how we actually deliver all of our technology to our clients in the form of IBM services. I mentioned earlier curiosity. This is something we're very keen on. So if you love to learn, you belong at IBM. You could pretty much spend every day, all year, probably on some learning at IBM, which I think is really important to our students that come into the organisation. We've got a number of different platforms. So this is completely self-service. A lot of it is online and self-study. Obviously, there is face-to-face and delivered workshops as well, but we have our Your Learning platform, which delivers a lot of the education. We have a whole career portal and support that helps individuals when they first come into the organisation. We have a set of digital badges across, industry or technology and digital skills, which people can work towards. And they are digital badges which are then recognised across the industry, not just internally at IBM as well. And then a few other programs, so Skills Build for students as well, is something actually increasing the digital skills for students in the early part of their career as well. So lots of opportunity to learn at IBM. I talked about inclusivity earlier on. So this is something that's at the forefront for IBM. We value different experiences and perspectives that each of us bring to the workplace. It's really important that we do that. We have a long history in IBM of promoting diversity and inclusion. If you go back actually 70 years, there was a policy letter that IBM created, which was a policy of hiring people without regard to race, colour, creed. And that was actually about 10 years before it became law in the US. So IBM have got a legacy and a history of really bringing policies around diversity and inclusivity even before it becomes law in many cases. And that mandate was ultimately expanded to include religion, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, national origin, genetics, disability, age, the list goes on there really. We have a number of programs that we're very proud of in IBM. So Embrace is our community around BAME. We have a Be Equal and allyship campaign. So that's with regard to a number of the communities, whether it be BAME, LGBT+, people with diverse abilities. And we're all encouraged to really get involved in those communities and really be an upstander and an ally, so that we, as I said earlier, everybody should feel like they can bring themselves to IBM. And we have lots of business resource groups where people are encouraged to get involved. And we do actually see a lot of our early professionals and students that come into the organisation really get involved in the inclusive and diverse projects and initiatives that we have. And it really does make a difference to those individuals. So life at IBM. We've got learning and lots of learning and networking events, lots of volunteering opportunities and what we call give back opportunities. There's a big focus on recognition and feedback, both giving feedback, but obviously receiving feedback and being recognised for the work that everybody does. We realise that's an important aspect to the culture of IBM. Lots of wellness resources and resilience toolkits, and it's just really making sure that everybody feels their best when they're coming to IBM, but there is lots of support available to everybody in terms of these initiatives. We've got the IBM Service Core there as well, so that kind of combines leadership development with the opportunity for IBMs to work with colleagues that have a positive social impact around the world as well. So this is something that, again, we see a lot of our students and early professionals taking a lot of those initiatives on board. So that's a little bit around life at IBM in a nutshell. Very hard to do in 10 minutes, but that's given you hopefully a bit of an overview. Let me now move on to what the actual opportunities are for students as they're perhaps leaving academia and coming into IBM, and what we can offer them. And I would say we've got a really good range of opportunities. So actually there's three here. So a gap year, what we call futures. That might be somebody that's actually perhaps finished their education or feels like they finished their education and they're not sure what to do. And actually it might be a case of let's have 12 months or so going into IBM and experiencing what a professional workplace looks like, And then after that gap year, then, you know, it's a case of, well, do I want to stay and perhaps pursue something within IBM? Do I actually want to go to university? Do I want to go and pursue something else? But it's a really good opportunity to really get that experience. We'll come on to talk about these in a bit more detail. If you feel like you're ready for work, we've got a whole raft of IBM apprenticeships from level 3 to level 6, some award-winning apprenticeship programs there, and we'll come on to talk about those. Or actually, if somebody's going to university, then we do have a university placement scheme as well. So this is typically when people go to university, students go to university, they quite often have a sandwich year in their third year, and they can come in for 12 months, and we see the students really benefit from that as well. And then obviously post-university, we have a graduate scheme as well. So let me go into a bit more detail on some of these. So the future scheme, this is a gap year basically. So there are business roles, technical roles, and what we call design roles. You can see on the slide there what the requirements are in terms of education and qualifications. I can't emphasize enough that we do not mind whether anyone has any work experience or not, or even what that work experience is. That is really not important to us. We look for potential in individuals. And as I say, it's a really good opportunity to come in and experience the workplace for a year. No commitment. If you want to stay after that, then we'll obviously try and make that happen. But if there are plans to perhaps go to university or do something differently, then that's absolutely fine as well. Typical starting salary of £19,000 with a £1,000 bonus, performance-related bonus at the end. They're in fulfilling and engaging full-time roles for 12 months. The apprenticeship scheme. So we've got quite a few apprenticeships that we offer. They range typically from 3 years or 4 years, depending on the actual apprenticeship that students come in and start. Starting salary of £20,000. And again, I think what differentiates IBM potentially here is actually you join as a full-time employee when you start an apprenticeship. So it's not a case of coming in and doing an apprenticeship, and then at the end of apprenticeship, seeing if you get a job in the company. You are hired from day one as an IBMer full-time. There's no question about after you finish your apprenticeship, you're a full-time IBMer from day one, which I think is really important. Again, there's business roles and there's technical roles. On the business side there, you can see we've got a couple of, we've got a level 3 and a level 4 apprenticeship, junior management consultant and junior technical sales. Technical roles, we've got level 4 apprenticeships here. We've got a junior DevOps, a test engineer and a software developer. And Tom on the call is going to talk about test engineer in a bit more detail. And then we've got some degree apprenticeships as well. So this is equivalent of obviously going to university and combining that with working. We've got a technical one there, which is the digital and technology. We've got a business one, which is a chartered business management degree. And we've got a design one there as well. Again, at the bottom of that slide, you can see some of the requirements in terms of qualifications that we expect. But again, we do not expect or have any expectations when it comes to work experience. You can come into IBM without having had any work experience in the past, because that's our job, to give you to give your children, your students, that work experience and to look at the potential that individuals have. I've actually just come back today. I've been in London for a graduation ceremony for some of those degree apprentices who 5 years ago would have been in exactly the same situation, thinking about what they were going to do. And it's been great to see them come in. Some of them have come in as a gap year and gone on to do that, but it's been great to see the growth and see them celebrate their graduation today in London face to face, which has been very rewarding. On to the degree apprenticeships. They are level 6, digital technology and solutions, chartered business management and the design degree. It's a mix of academic study and workplace learning. So somebody that's doing this will be in IBM 4 days a week typically, and then a day a week they would spend perhaps attending lectures and doing their academic work. IBM choose the universities that we work with, so it's not you can't go and select which uni you need to go to. We don't actually select that, but IBM pay for that university and that degree in full. There is no cost to the student, to the employee, and obviously they get a degree at the end of it, and they've been earning money as well. So I think a really good potential decision to do that. Okay, I'm going to pass on to Anish. Anish, has completed or is working on the Chartered Manager's Degree Apprenticeship. So I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. Anish.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, John. So I think I've got 5 minutes here just to quickly talk about my path to an apprenticeship. So thought I'd put some photos on there for me a bit cheerier just there. So yeah, John, if you want to go into the next slide, I just quickly have an outline as to my route to an apprenticeship and how I got there and how I felt how I've gone through it so far. So I completed my A levels in 2017, and during my time of sixth form, I didn't actually know what an apprenticeship was. I didn't really know about the opportunities, the ability to apply and get one. Like my friends, we pretty much all of them went to university after completing our A levels. So, and that summer, I've done my exams. I'm waiting for the results. Everything's set on university. I was going to study up in Manchester and do economics. However, it was actually over that summer I'd met a few people that I was working with at my part-time job who mentioned apprenticeships, and I didn't really know much about it. So I started talking to them. I learned a bit more, and I went back home, had a chat with my parents, and I said, maybe I should consider this. And my parents were really open about it, and that we had a good chat. And we didn't really feel a rush to get into anything. Go straight to university. It was good to probably take some time and just really assess the options, because it was something that not even my school had really pushed at all. Just shows how far I think apprenticeships have come just over the past few years. So I deferred my university entry. I pushed it back a year while securing it, and I used that year to continue my work. I worked at a local accountancy firm for a bit, and I used that year to apply and research for different apprenticeships. And really, the reason why I was doing that was because I was going to commit 3 to 4 years in full-time education. However, if I could get a degree which was paid for whilst get a salary and have a guaranteed job at the end, which is what IBM were offering, it seemed too good to be true. So I had to apply. I had to try and see what it was about. So I think from initial applications, getting an offer, I know it varies. I think it took a few months, and then however long it was, and I'd secured it starting September 2019. And by this time, a lot of my friends were in their second year of university, and they were starting to look for jobs, and we were just having a chat and meeting up with them. And I think it was probably then I probably realised I'm really happy I did take some time out and assess my options, not rush straight into university, because nowadays it's probably really easy to get caught up in what other people are doing. And yeah, we just had a good conversation, and I realised that this is really what worked for me, and I was really looking forward to joining. So I started September 2019, so it's been just over 2 years since. I'm now in the final year of my apprenticeship, and I've had countless opportunities to try different projects, work with different teams. John's outlined some of the stuff you can get up to. So I've done a lot of project management roles. I've worked on building and designing technological implementations for new hospitals, and a few other things there, DevOps, commercial management and operations. And I'm hoping to complete my degree element of my apprenticeship come April. So there's only 5 or 6 months left now. So that's kind of where I've been and kind of where I've got to now. And really, I'm looking forward to finishing the degree apprenticeship. And as John said, I'm treated as a full-time regular employee here, meaning that my role at the end is secured. I don't have to apply for a job as long as I pass the apprenticeship. I can continue doing what I'm doing and working in the part of the business. And yeah, I think it's a really incredible thing, and it's something that if I hadn't taken that step back in the summer of 2017 and thought about it, then I probably would have finished my university studies now and would probably be applying for jobs. So it's an incredible blend. It can be challenging at times. However, if you've got onto the course, they've accepted you, you have the potential to do it. Everyone I'm with is getting through it, and it's really good fun meeting and working with people who are also doing the same thing as you. And the best thing about it being that the people you're working with is anyone and everybody. You meet so many different people on a daily basis, and you might not get the authentic university experience with respect to having 5 days a week full time there. However, you get exactly the same degree, you get it paid for, and you also get to meet people from maybe other employers doing degree apprenticeships, and you get to network that way. So overall, it's been really fun. I'm just happy that, as I said, I didn't rush into it. I had some time to sit back, and just as some context, both my parents don't have degrees. They really wanted me to go into university, but it was more so down to me. I looked at a few apprenticeship options that IBM offered, but I wanted to do the degree one. So yeah, that's it really. I hope that 5 minutes is probably a good effective time, John. But yeah, that's my kind of story.
That's great. Thank you very much, Anish, for sharing your story. And we may have some questions, but before we do, I'm going to move over to Tom.
Yep, thank you. So I'm Tom. I'm on the software test engineer apprenticeship. So just here are some photos of me over the last couple of years. The one on the left is actually more recently at an awards ceremony, but I will talk about that in a little bit more detail. So John, if you want to pop onto the next slide. So very much like Anish, I've kind of done my sort of timeline and kind of same sort of story at school. So I left school in 2016 with 3 A levels, maths, business and IT. Not really knowing what I wanted to do, not really knowing if I wanted to go to uni. Kind of looked at uni as an option of full-time education, but was I willing to commit to a subject I didn't know I wanted to take? It was quite a hard decision then, so I kind of said, look, I'll leave it and I'll potentially come back to it. In the end, I actually decided to just go into full-time work, which sort of led me to 3 years of sort of hopping between a few jobs, working as a football coach, and alongside that I was doing some marketing media stuff with them. I helped out as a membership advisor at a local gym, and then sort of spent the large part of that time as a sales executive for a local car company, which was BMW and Mini, where I live. Now, during those sort of years, I didn't really like what I was doing. The work was good, there was a salary, but it wasn't exactly what I felt like I wanted to do in my life. So I got chatting with a friend who did a similar occupation to the testing, and he was like, well, why don't you look into apprenticeships? I had no idea what an apprenticeship was, besides sort of a technician who did an apprenticeship in a car dealership fixing cars. So when I actually started to look into it, my world opened up. I never knew the different opportunities that are available. You could look at degree ones, you could look at level 4. There's a whole new range, like John has explained. So it really kind of showed me there's an entry level into the corporate world or into a different occupation, and it's actually seen a lot larger and a lot more beneficial than certain other routes. And the great thing about doing an apprenticeship is there's a guaranteed job, you're earning a salary, and you haven't got this huge sort of overwhelming debt on your head. Now, there's a lot of positives of either route, and going to the universities as a degree one's a great one because you still get your independence whilst earning a salary. And exactly what I found. I had friends who'd been going to university during that time, and we were doing the exact same things together. They were obviously just away in their locations, and I could just go meet them and be a part of it. So I didn't feel left out. I didn't feel like I missed out not going to university at all. I actually feel like I came out better because I took some time to actually realize what I want to do. And now, coming a few years later, I picked a career which I want to sort of stay in for the rest of my life. So it's worked out well. So in 2019, I applied for the software test apprenticeship with IBM. This was a lot of extensive research which came me to pick this one. IBM being the company it is, really well known in the software test sort of world and the IT, and consultancy being sort of the forefront in the future of where I wanted to end up. It kind of sort of linked up. In the beginning of my time with IBM, I got to work on the Digital Skills Academy, which was an 8-week training course. So the great thing is we do a lot of education learning within our apprentices. And I spent 4 weeks learning around coding, sales, presentation skills, all of those different aspects of what you'd want to do and sort of with a career. So your soft skills and your technical skills, to work with 2 real clients working on sort of prototype designs. Now, one of these actually made it to the press, which was a lot of work we did with Burberry. So I helped to design a prototype, which was used for their graphic designers and how they sort of work with modifying clothes and sending that back off to the designers to then change and build up a prototype to send to them so they can look around the clothes, see how it feels. And that made a lot of headlines in 2019 and really sort of pushed to the forefront that, you know what, the work I'm doing, even as an apprentice, has a lot of meaning. Towards the end of 2019, I joined Nationwide Building Society, and I've been contracted with them from IBM since. So I'm an employee of IBM, but what we do is we hire out in my area. So we contract out to different clients, and my client is Nationwide. Now, I've been with them up until this year, and I'm still going strong with them, but I've had a lot of success being with them. So in the end of 2020, I got a great opportunity to work on one of the projects within the mortgages space, and we sort of redesigned the way that we do the testing within their area. And off the back of that, we were nominated for an award and made it all the way to the final of this award. And that was really good. Again, it's good evidence, good networking, and it gets you sort of out there with the senior figures within IBM and within the sort of testing and consultancy world. So a lot of people were then starting to see your name and sort of reach out to you, and a lot more opportunities start to open up. And this is not something which you get at university as such. Whereas as an apprentice, I was getting all of this within the business. So I was really sort of getting my name out there already, networking whilst learning. And then as we come into this year for 2021, I actually was recognised for my work at Nationwide. They gave me a role promotion there. So they sort of bumped me up a band in what the sort of workload that I was doing and gave me a lot more responsibilities. Now, as an apprentice, that's a great way of being recognised for the sort of things we're doing. Not just by IBM myself, but the clients are going, you know what, you've got a really good piece of talent on your hands, and we want to actually sort of thank you for that. So we're going to sort of push them forwards. And the work from Nationwide and the other sort of bits and pieces throughout the years, all sort of collected in between the senior leadership team and my practice. And I was nominated for several awards for the Graduate Test of the Year and the IT Apprentice of the Year. I didn't win, unfortunately, in those, but I do know the person who did win, and they are also part of IBM. So IBM is highly recognised within industry awards for apprentices. We won both of those awards, even though they weren't myself. So we are creating really good talent, and we are attracting really good people who are interested in doing something and sort of changing the world when it moves forward. And John, if we move on to the next slide. Now, I've spoken about testing, and a lot of people probably won't know what I'm talking about. To summarize testing, it's effectively ensuring that there is a good quality in a project. So if you're looking at a website or a product of some kind, there's sort of software and hardware underneath it, and we will sort of ensure that that software matches the requirements that a client will set out. So I work on the performance aspect. So a client might say to me, I want to make sure that this site can handle 1,000 people logging into it at any one time. And you'd effectively make sure that that's possible by testing it in a sort of developed environment, which is sort of a mock-up of the real thing. And that can be done by manual, automated tests, whatever we want to use, depending on what's available to us on that client site. And we will then identify any errors, gaps, sort of missing things against that requirement, and point that out to the client and say, look, this is what we need to work on to ensure that your project, your product is what you need it to be. There's a lot of careers off the back of what I do. So currently I'm sitting in the test engineer analyst, but you can easily move yourself up to sort of a senior test engineer, consultant, and even get into the partner levels within IBM. And that's the same wherever you go within the industry. So it's well recognized to do a career in test and then move from there and sort of jump about if you need to get higher. And people are well within understanding of what quality assurance is going to do for your project, because you wouldn't put a product into live without knowing it works the way you want it to do. And that's all I'll say. Obviously, if there's any more questions around testing and wanted to understand a little bit more, happy to answer them at the end. So back to you, John.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom and Anish, for sharing your experiences. Really inspiring in terms of the work that you're getting involved in. So excellent to hear. In terms of next steps, so hopefully, we've piqued your interest and what your appetite in terms of what IBM do. I would also say you don't have to be technical to join IBM. There are business roles. There are clearly technical roles as well. But even if you come in and do a technical role, I know people that have come in that haven't done a day's technical work in their lives, but we come in and we educate people and we train them as part of that apprenticeship as well. So I'll just add that as well. In terms of next steps and staying in touch, we've got our social media platforms here where you can find out a little bit more and stay connected. What I would say is, in terms of the apprenticeships, National Apprenticeship Week is happening, I think, in the second week of February next year. And that's when we'll be opening a lot of our apprenticeship opportunities. So we'll be opening all that scheme up for people to apply. For those, it is heavily in demand. So I would suggest having a think about that and applying as soon as that opens in February. The gap year scheme has temporarily closed for now, but it is probably going to reopen again for applications in February if that was something that interested you as well. Okay, so I think we've got a bit of time left. Mitesh, you mentioned questions earlier.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've seen some questions already, Mitesh.
So I've got a couple that I got via email, which I can start with. They're quite good questions, and if anyone else wants to ask any questions, if you could just ask them down on the chat, we'll ask them in an order. So a question we received actually previously, like previous to the conversation starting. And by the way, sorry, thank you for the presentations, everyone. Anish, Tom, and John. It's actually good to hear your account. And one of the questions we had is, one of them was answered, was like, have you got opportunities for post-school leavers, which you've answered, all three of you have answered. But the sort of question on that was, what areas, and so what geographical areas do you employ in?
Okay, yeah, good question. So in terms of geographic areas, so we are a global and a national company. So we do obviously have offices in certain areas. So we have an office in London, quite a large office there, presence there. We have a very large site in Winchester in the south, but we also have locations in Warwick, in Manchester, in Edinburgh, in Scotland as well. And actually, we do ask people to be flexible. So there is an element, obviously, hybrid working, especially now. So people do have the ability to work at home at times. But we do also have those offices in various locations throughout the country, and we'll always ask people where they would like to be based. And obviously, we do try and match people to their preferences in terms of location.
So I think this is a question you've answered, but I think it's worth reiterating. One of the parents have asked, for a degree apprenticeship, will his degree be the equivalent of a bachelor's degree?
Yes, it will be. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. That was that one. There's a few on the side here, which we'll go with which was regarding career pathways. Does IBM recognise individual contributor tracks and the ability to move between function roles, etc.? I assume that means can you change career pathway when you're working at IBM?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of IBM is that it's so large and there is so much opportunity that actually there is scope to change function, as it were. I mean, I've been at IBM for 25 years, okay, and I haven't done the same thing, far from it, for 25 years. I've had probably three or four different careers probably in that time frame, and that's because I've had the ability to kind of look at doing different things and move around. So again, that option is available. We wouldn't necessarily promote that, whilst doing that first kind of apprenticeship perhaps, but there is absolutely the possibility to do that going forward and have multiple careers in different functions at IBM. Yes.
Just on the sort of university degree apprenticeship stuff, you mentioned in your presentation that you work with some universities. There's a question, which is, which particular universities do you work with? Okay,
yeah. So in terms of universities we work with, so on the digital and technology solutions, we work with Exeter University. We work with Winchester University, because again, that's where we have quite a population. We work with the University of Kent in collaboration with the Pearson Business School for the Chartered Manager. We also offer that at Winchester as well. Manchester Metropolitan University we work with for those that are based slightly further north. The Open University, that's probably more for those experienced hires actually, rather than students, although it is a possibility. We've got a new relationship with Northeastern University. You've got a campus in London, actually. That's a US university that we're working with, but we see a lot at Uni of Kent for Chartered Business Manager. Exeter is very popular for the technical piece as well. And one thing I would add, for some of those apprenticeships, the level 3 and level 4, a couple of those, we deliver them, IBM deliver them as the employer and the training provider. So it's all completely in-house on a couple of those. That's the junior IT tech sales and the junior management consultant. They are delivered purely by IBM.
There's a couple of questions here. One is, what is the youngest applicant age? So for your apprenticeships, I assume.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we have certainly had people that have joined whilst they're 17, so it's pre-18. So I know for a fact we've had a couple of people that have joined at 17. I would also add, whilst we were talking about age, there is no, I think I saw is there an age limit? And no, there isn't. So anybody can do an apprenticeship at any time of their life, actually.
Just on the age limit thing, there's one question from via email, which was someone's son or daughter is currently at university. I think they're studying some sort of technology degree. Are they able to move into an apprenticeship if they're on a regular degree path?
Potentially, yes. So it would depend on what degree apprenticeship they were moving into. So there's something that we need to do in partnership with the university, something which is called prior learning. So we need to basically assess to make sure somebody doesn't have, I guess, too much prior learning to then go on to an apprenticeship. So somebody could have studied a degree in one subject and then do a degree apprenticeship in a completely different subject. So we do have examples where people have done that. I think perhaps if it's similar, then there might be a slight challenge with funding that apprenticeship because of the prior learning aspect.
So just for everyone that's on here, I'm trying to get through as many questions as possible. So if I don't get to your question, what I'll do is I'll ask IBM to reply to any questions we haven't done, and we'll share them. There's a question on here about apprenticeships and availability to study abroad. I haven't actually heard of it, but I'm assuming that there's no like universities that you study with abroad for apprenticeship.
There isn't. No, everything that we do is in the UK, and the reason for that is because of the funding. So we can only fund an apprenticeship that is actually delivered in England, actually, or you could be in Scotland, but you need to spend a certain amount of time in England. That's how we get the funding.
There's a very relevant question here about remote working, remote learning. The question is, how are you dealing with remote working in terms of onboarding, training, mentoring, and building a team culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I mean, we pivoted to this fairly quickly, and actually we were able to switch, certainly at the beginning of the pandemic, switch all of our onboarding and training purely to completely to remote. The feedback that we've had has been extremely positive, actually. So that has worked very well. Similarly with the universities, although all of our degree apprenticeships, all the universities, they've returned to face-to-face. We are now seeing people going into the offices and meeting up a little bit more so now. But in terms of our onboarding and the training that we deliver, I think because IBM always had a kind of legacy of actually doing quite a lot of or a balance of remote delivery, we're in a position to actually do that very well. And we've actually just won a Princess Royal Training Award actually for the training and onboarding that we do. So we've been recognised for how we've done that as well. So it's been a positive experience.
There's another good question here about leaving home. Do your apprentices essentially leave home to take on to start that apprenticeship, or are most people generally live close to where they grew up?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say the majority are probably close to where home is, where they live, because that's the kind of nature of apprenticeships, that we shouldn't be necessarily completely relocating people. I think there's always the option there where as an apprentice gets more experienced in their career, if there was a need for them to perhaps relocate, and if they were happy to do so, then that's an option. But part of the reason why we ask for people in terms of their preferred location is that we are cognizant of the nature of an apprenticeship being local to where you're from.
Another question, and you might have answered this in the presentation. It was about entry level requirements for your apprenticeships. I'm going to read the question. Actually, I've heard IBM apprenticeships are very competitive to get into. Do you tend to offer them mostly to those with the highest GCSE and A-level grades?
Not at all. No. So they are competitive. So there is a lot of interest in our apprenticeships. I am involved in that interviewing process and recruitment process along with a lot of other colleagues. And again, I can't emphasize enough that we really look for individuals that I'm going to call it a growth mindset is something that we're really focused on. So somebody that is open to learning, wants to get involved in things, and we can see that it would be a good fit for them and that they would be a good fit for IBM. We don't look at taking the best grades that come in, and we don't even look at the focus on the subjects that people have actually studied in as well. You know, there's many examples where people have studied subjects previously that have not been related to digital or technology, and perhaps haven't had the best grades, and they've turned out to be extremely successful in IBM.
There's a good follow-up question on that when you talked about growth mindset. Again, I'm just going to read the question because it's a good question. Many organizations are keen on inclusion and diversity across the spectrum of definitions. Does IBM encourage diversity of thinking, or is the expectation one of fitting in with the IBM culture?
It's completely diversity of thinking. So when I say diversity and inclusivity, I'm thinking about diversity holistically. We obviously have values, as most organizations do. One of the practices that we actually embody is something that's called treasure wild ducks. And what it ultimately means is that everybody's opinion and idea is valued and should be listened to. And it's about the reason we hire early professionals and young people is because they come in with innovative ideas, different ways of thinking, and we completely want to embrace that. So diversity of thinking is absolutely something we're keen to focus on, and we have even programs, neurodiverse programs, and how we can bring that talent into the organization as well.
There's a question here about it's more about the company, I suppose. Do you have any clubs are offered? And I'm assuming they mean by mixed hockey or debating or arts or something like that within IBM, where people can get together of like-minded.
Yeah, I might hand over to Tom or Anish actually on this one. I don't know whether they've got any thoughts on clubs that they've been involved in. Or
so there are. So basically, we have a load of Slack channels, which how we message internally within sort of either apprentices, interns, graduates, whatever there are. There are specific teams. You just find the channel, and then you can get added in that way, and then you can sort of plan going along to ones which are local to you. So it can be location dependent. So I know for a fact in London there are football teams, there are rugby teams, there are specific teams around that, and they do meet up and they train and they play on weekends, for example. In terms of specific clubs, like sort of ones online, I think there are, but you've just got to find them within the channels and just sort of get added towards them, basically, to get involved. But there are people who do it, and more a case of it's just like myself or Anish might have an idea of something we want to do, and then we create it, and then people get involved. So it's IBM's just helping to foster the culture, and then if it's something which IBM likes the idea of, then obviously they may help fund with kits, example, and stuff like that. So that's the idea there.
There's a question about sort of degree of the apprenticeship and sort of the study versus work split. I mean, the question specifically says, how often are university lectures, and how often are university lectures per week? But maybe just worth saying what the split is and how the sort of education split works.
I think I'll let Anish answer.
Yeah, no, I'll go for that. So it does depend slightly upon the specific pathway, but for me, I'm doing the business management one, and my study day is every Friday. So that is the day where now I go back into study in person. And that Friday is my allotted day, so my project knows that I'm studying on that day, and that's kind of my lecture and seminars, and then you kind of get the work done around the clock around the week when you can. For example, I've got some friends doing the digital and technological solutions pathway at Exeter, and they have it can be slightly different. There's not necessarily day that they have blocked out. It can be either independent learning, so it would be pre-recorded, or they'd be on a block release. So it varies. However, on average, it'll be 20% of your contracted hours per week. So usually 8 hours a week, like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. There's a question that I saw was, so I've just got to find it again. So someone's asked a question about whether you can apply for an apprenticeship if you don't get your university place, and I'm going to sort of partly answer that. And I think that you shouldn't look at no one should look at a degree apprenticeship, whether it's with IBM or anyone else, as a fallback to not getting into university. I think you've got to look at it as at least an equivalent, if not like more competitive, because you're actually going to work with someone and you're going to be assessed on your ability to work. And I'm going to say that my piece, but then John, you could answer that as well.
I think you've answered it very well, actually, Mitesh. I think you can, yes. We've had examples where people have perhaps had a change of mind or a change of decision in terms of what they're going to do, going to university, etc. So you can, but I think you need to, as also Tom and Anish said in their experiences there and their journeys, they talked about that kind of spending the time to think actually what is right for them. So I think spending that time to actually think about what you're doing and making the right decision, which is not easy. I really appreciate. There's lots to think about here, and sometimes it could be a myriad of things to think about. Yeah, I think you answered that very well, Mitesh.
I think we're going to ask one more question, which I'm interested to hear the answer to, actually. But and then we'll call it a night. How are IBM staying? How are they going to continue their growth, and how are they going to continue to get market share when there's a lot of competition in the technology space? And names mentioned here are Microsoft, Google, Oracle, Accenture. So over to you, John.
That's a good one to end on, isn't it? So I'm not sure how much I can really answer this, but IBM are very clear in terms of what their strategy is, which is hybrid cloud and AI. And again, I appreciate there is lots of competition in that area. But as I said earlier, IBM have been around for 110 years. They started off making meat slicers. That's the first thing they sold to clients, meat slicers. 110 years later, they're working on hybrid cloud and artificial intelligence. And between that time of making meat slicers and today on artificial intelligence, they've done everything in between. And in many ways, they have shown leadership there. I think IBM there's a bit of a differentiator, I think, with IBM, in that they can provide a kind of full package, I suppose, that we have a security business, we have a cloud business, we have the artificial intelligence, we have blockchain. We also have a financing division as well, which actually, if it was a bank, probably would be the fourth or fifth largest bank in the world. So we can offer that financing package to clients as well. I think the expertise that IBM have, we are our people, right? So again, it's about hiring the talent. That's why we want to hire the young talent as well, that are bringing the new ideas, the diverse thinking, which we talked about, to really just try and remain that step ahead. And also, it's about I think acknowledging other organisations and partnering with them when it makes sense. So it's not always about trying to beat competition or really trying to have that fight. It's about partnering with them and actually diversifying what you can do to bring the right solution to the client. The client really wants a solution. Where it comes from, they're not always, they're quite happy to speak to multiple vendors there. So I think that's where we're seeing IBM. And I say 110 years is still a company that is performing well. And I don't think that happens by accident. It's the innovation and it's the people that make that happen.
John, Tom, and Anish, thank you very much, and everyone who's attended, thank you very much. I know there's some other questions that people want answering, and what I'll do is it's getting a little bit late for everyone, and I'm sure everyone wants to go have dinner or get on with the evening. So we'll stay in touch with IBM and get some of these questions answered, and we'll share them with everyone that's attended today. A thank you to all the parents who have taken time out their evening to attend, and hopefully you found it insightful and enjoyable. We'll be sending around a survey to see how it went so we can improve our future events. And we hope to be hosting more of these, so look out for them. I'm going to put my email address in this chat so you can get hold of me if you've got any other questions. And what we'll do, if you want to get in touch with IBM, we'll make sure we send around some contact details for them via email so that you can get hold of them directly if you need to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, parents, and thank you, IBM. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.